So I was going through the chapter on Indira Gandhi in your book, beautifully titled Autumn of the Matriarch, and I couldn't help but notice there are certain similarities from that time. Of course, there was a constitutional emergency that was imposed that she, of course, led to it. You've given her due credit for her decisiveness when it was the Bangladesh crisis or her contribution to India's science and space program. But you've also similarly called Modi a bully and an absolute authoritarian. What are the sort of similarities and dissimilarities that you see between them?
Well, I'll begin with the dissimilarities. There are dissimilarities, and the dissimilarities are one, that Modi is genuinely self-made. He comes from a really humble background. Whereas Indira Gandhi was born into a family of political and social privilege. You know, a Brahmin family and a family where both her father and her grandfather had been presidents of the Congress. And her father, of course. So, Modi is self-made. Indira Gandhi benefited from the fact that she came from the upper strata of society, from a political family. That's a personal difference. An ideological difference is that Indira Gandhi, for all her faults, had a deep understanding of the linguistic and religious and ethnic diversity of India. Modi spent his entire life in the kind of homogenizing school of Hindutva. But having talked about these dissimilarities, there are similarities in their political style. You know, for Modi and for Indira Gandhi, the party and the government and the nation are all extensions of yourself. So first the party, first you capture the party. So the BJP is only Modi, the Congress is only Indira Gandhi. The government is only Modi, all the ads are only Modi. And then the nation, I embody the nation. Because Obama looked at me in the eye, India became great. So I am the nation. Similarly, Indira Gandhi would talk like this. She would talk about how she would allow artists to paint herself as Durga. So first to identify the party with yourself. First step. So the Congress was a party of many great leaders, it became Indira Gandhi. And the government is only you. And then the nation is also you. So these are the three steps in which Modi has also worked. And the BJP used to always pride itself on being a party of multiple leaders, of important state leaders. They used to always oppose Vyakti Puja, what they called personality cult, but they have succumbed to it. I mean, in that, Modi has made the party, that the government and the nation seem as if it is an extension of himself. That the party is Modi and everyone else. The government is Modi and everyone else. And same with Indira Gandhi. So that's, their political style has some similarities which are disturbing. Despite their personal differences. I mean, Modi is a completely self-made man, whereas Indira Gandhi was born to an upper class home with a political background. But their political styles are very similar. I think we should worry about this.
So there was a time where the constitution was nothing but amendments, and now we
may not go to that. I think Indian democracy is mature, so we're not going to have another emergency. But this Vyakti Puja is dangerous, that there's so many ads about Modi, it's only Modi. I mean, if you see a government ad, it's only Modi, it's such a big face of him, and the minister in charge will be such a tiny mugshot of him, right? So the whole thing is about him, and the tendency to speak of yourself the third person. Modi ne kaha tha, Barack said Modi ne kaha tha. It shows the extreme vanity. And Indira Gandhi also, there's a lovely story about Indira Gandhi which I've written about, and I'm writing about it again. There's a story about Indira Gandhi where she was visiting America. And Lyndon Johnson was the president. He had never met her before, and it was very rare in the 1960s and 70s to have a woman prime minister. You normally say Mr. Prime Minister or whatever, or Mr. Nehru. So Lyndon Johnson asked the Indian ambassador in Washington, what does your Prime Minister like to be called? When I meet her, what should I address her? Should I call her Mrs. Gandhi or Madam Prime Minister? So the story goes that the ambassador then relayed this query to Delhi, and it was conveyed to Mrs. Gandhi, and Mrs. Gandhi said, most of my cabinet ministers call me sir. Okay. So it's a funny story, but it tells you that, that sir usually said is a big ball, your big boss, right? So Modi also, the cabinet ministers were totally in awe of Indira Gandhi, and they're totally in awe of Modi. So there's some disturbing similarity, this centralization of power, where the party, the government machinery and the nation are merely embodiments of a single individual. That's the similarity between Modi and Indira Gandhi.
But you don't see the threat of this sort of...
No, because I think they are mature, there won't be an emergency, there will be criticism. And people like me and others are criticizing this and drawing these parallels. But it's disturbing, it's not healthy for a government to be identified with one person. Because even in Nehru's greatest heyday, there was Patel, there was Pant, there was Y.B. Chavan, there was Lal Bahadur Shastri, there were Kamaraj, there were many other leaders who were as important, or if not as important, quite important. Now there is Modi in the rest, just as there is Indira Gandhi in the rest. And that is not healthy for any democracy, because in a cabinet system of governance, the Prime Minister is only first among equals. Everyone else must also have their place, their autonomy, their responsibility. And yet, I mean, if you talk to people in Delhi, ministers are so scared. They can't say anything without the PMO clearing it. So that is, it's not healthy.
And given the sort of numbers the BJP enjoys in the Lok Sabha, and Rajya Sabha is probably the only place where the bills are getting blocked, there is a certain sort of fear that this ordinance Raj that is taking over. Is that fair? Like,
I mean, I don't want to comment much on it because I don't know the legal aspects of it. But I think clearly, I mean, there should be more debate, more discussion, and it's not only now. For the last 10-15 years, Parliament hasn't properly functioned. There's very little debate in Parliament. Bills are passed in a hurry, there are too many walkouts. And the Congress has been guilty of it, the BJP has been guilty of it, and all these are aspects that any student of Indian democracy should be concerned about.
So we were talking about how maybe ousting Rahul Gandhi might bode some sort of revival of the Congress. And you've also written about what Sanjay Gandhi's joining of politics did for Indira Gandhi's politics. So what is this? Do you see some sort of similarities here? Or
No,
none at all?
Sanjay Gandhi was ruthless. Sanjay Gandhi was ruthless
Yeah.
and politically smart. Rahul Gandhi is indifferent and weak and politically rather uninformed. So they clearly his personality is very different from his uncle's. But it's also clear that he's not up to the job of reviving or leading the Congress party. He lacks the intelligence, the drive, the motivation, the understanding. And he's holding back the Congress party. And the only thing that the polls agreed on in the Delhi election, we are speaking when the results are out, are the Congress will be wiped out. And that's true in many other states. In Maharashtra, they were so powerful and they are virtually extinct. In Delhi, they ruled for 15 years till recently. So in state after state, Kerala may be the only state in India where they are in a reasonably comfortable position. Because there is no BJP there and the communists are also declining in Kerala. So a great party, how do you revive it? Rahul Gandhi has been in politics 10 years. His peers don't respect him. He's not been active in parliament. He's not taken up any cause seriously. So, at the same time, the Congress is dependent on a family. Generations of the Congress, since Indira Gandhi took over the party in 1969, for 45 years, they have only known of one family running the Congress. So, there's a dependence syndrome. How do they get rid of it? These are questions that the Congress will have to answer. But it's very clear that Rahul cannot revive the Congress party because he lacks the competence and the energy. And it's equally clear that bringing in his sister won't help because his sister brings the baggage of her husband who's been involved in all kinds of shady deals. So if the Congress is to have a future, it has to find a young leadership beyond the Gandhi family. Whether that will happen, we don't know. It may just continue to stick to the family, in which case it will continue to decline and become more and more marginal and insignificant in Indian politics.
So then, what do you think is a party like the AAP a good example of non-dynastic politics that can actually bring some meaningful content into Indian politics?
Yes, I think AAP is healthy because it's got good young leadership and largely honest. Not all. Now they've started taking some people with criminal records. It's not religiously does not discriminate. And I'm very pleased that when the Imam of the Jama Masjid offered support to the Aam Aadmi Party, Kejriwal at once refused it. He said, I don't believe in this religious endorsement, either by a sant or by an imam. So I think there's some healthy trends in the Aam Aadmi Party. At the same time, there are some problems. One problem is it's also a personality cult. It's only Kejriwal. It's not clear whether there's a second leadership. And if it's only Kejriwal, you can have a party in a city-state like Delhi based on one individual. But if you want to develop healthy, functioning, effective state units in Maharashtra, Karnataka, other states, you have to have good leadership there. So here, we don't know how that will happen. It's too early to say whether the success in Delhi can be replicated elsewhere. I am skeptical about whether it can happen in the short term. In the long term, if you really go to the grassroots, you build a good organization in every state, you develop good contacts, you cultivate local leaders. In Maharashtra, you need a leader who speaks Marathi, not a Hindi speaker, and so on. Because the diversity of our country is such. Every state needs a different kind of approach.
Just as a last round of advice to the sort of audience that we have, young people who follow Youth Ki Awaaz and young people who follow your work, what would your advice be to them when it comes to looking at history objectively?
Well, I think read as widely as possible, have an open mind, travel, which is I think very important, a way of opening your eyes, go outside your comfort zone, go to different parts of India, different parts of the world. And that's all. I mean, I can't give any concrete advice as to do ABCD. That would be a mistake. I mean, I can't lay down a line. But be curious, be open-minded, read widely, read writers of different persuasions. Watch different kinds of films, and travel. And that's the way to broaden your mind and acquire.